Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. Sorry, it's been a while. I've been pretty busy. Um, Something to keep in mind this upcoming week is that the NFL schedule will be fully released on Thursday, May 12th. So after that, I will then start to come up with my predictions for this upcoming season. Right now, what I want to do, now that the draft was a week ago and it's come and gone, I want to go over my draft grades. I might not go over every single team, but I'll definitely go over some few teams because I feel like a lot of teams, there were some praises and there's a few who don't deserve praise. But I mean, when basically half the NFL teams get an A minus or above, and that's pretty good. Although no one gets an A plus because I always can find one fault on the team, and there's hardly any people who fail. There's only a couple, but for the most part, a lot of teams did pretty well. So let's get started with the team that had the number one overall pick in Jacksonville. So I give them a D. I would have gone Hutchinson with my number one pick instead of Trayvon Walker just because of the production that Hutchinson had in college. I don't like the other picks as well. The only reason why they don't get complete F is because I do like that they traded back in the first round and got Utah linebacker Devin Lloyd. A lot of people compare him to Darius Leonard or Fred Warner. So like if he does become that, then that's a good get there. Detroit, I'm giving them an A. It's rare to say this about a Lions draft, but I gotta give credit where credit's due. While I have doubts about Dan Campbell as a coach, he has proven two things. One, he's a good motivator, but then also he's pretty good at drafting because last year's draft was pretty good as well. Um, Houston, I'm giving them a C minus. I think taking Derek Stingley Jr., the quarterback from LSU, was a big risk when he hasn't played like when he had took a year off and then he didn't have a lot of interceptions in college. It's just kind of risky. And then also they took a center, an offensive lineman from A&M, which I thought was he was more of an end first round pick, not a mid first round pick, so that was a little bit reaching there. Um, I do like their other later round picks as well, so that's why they get a passing grade. But again, just I don't like the very top picks. That's why they get a C minus. The New York Jets, I'm giving them an A. They probably got the best cornerback in the draft, Amon Garner. They probably got the best wide receiver in the draft, Gary Wilson. They probably got the best running back in the draft, Brees Hall. They got the third best, probably defensive end, Jermaine Johnson from Florida State. The second best tight end, Jimmy Ruckert. One of the most underrated tight ends, and Max Mitchell from Louisiana, who's like one of the best tight ends in college, as far as like not giving out sacks and all that. And then they drafted defensive end with their last pick in the fourth round. But my only knock here is that the Jets really needed a linebacker. So if I were them, I would have drafted a linebacker with my last pick there. But if Clemens, for me, ends up being a baller, then can't complain there. New York Giants, I'm giving them a B minus. I do like that they pick up Kayvon Thibodeau. I'm not knocking them for that, but the problem is at the fifth pick they could have gotten their choice of tackles, whether it's Neal who had taken or Iguanu, and then since Carolina was going to take offensive tackle cornerback, that means you could have had Kayvon Thibodeau at seven instead. I mean, if they say, "Oh, we like Neil Alonso," it didn't matter, and that's why we took Kayvon third because we didn't care if we had Iguanu or Neal. It's like, well, then that's fine. But everyone thought Iguana was better than Neil at this point, so I didn't like that. Also, I mean, I don't like their later round picks as well. But again, since they do get two top definite top end players in the draft that should be immediate contributors, that's why they're going to get a B minus. Carolina, I had them getting a B. I mean, they are blessed that Jaime Corner, for instance, State just falls into their lap, and now they shore up that offensive line there. They also take another offensive guard later in the draft, and then also they get their potential quarterback teacher. I say potential because I'm not sure if he will pan out or not, but they are giving the reins to Matt Corral. Not this year, obviously, because Sam Darnold can use it for another year as Matt Corral gets used to the NFL and all that. But I mean, I like Matt Corral. Obviously, he has some off the field stuff that's kind of concerning, but if that doesn't translate onto the football field, I feel like he can potentially, be a good pick there and buy his Carolina time, or should I say, a Matt Rule time, because since he's on the hot seat. Atlanta, I'm giving them a B minus. Again, I would have drafted Malik Willis over Desmond Ritter if I was Atlanta. I also would have drafted Garrett Wilson over Drake London. But again, neither picks aren't that bad. And then they also got a good running back from BYU, Tyler Algier, in the fifth round. They got multiple linebackers to shore up the depth there. they only went one offensive line pick, which was until like the later rounds. So I was kind of surprised by that. I thought they should have drafted offensive line way earlier, which is why they don't get like an A or anything. But B minus is good enough. Seattle. I don't fault them for not taking a quarterback here because again, this wasn't a good quarterback class. They can get Stroud or Young or Ty Van Dyke or whoever next year. I do like their draft, which is again where to say with Seattle, especially the first round. But I do like their draft. They get an offense tackle, which they desperately needed. They get a new running back, which was needed, Kenneth Walker, the third from Michigan State. Because let's be honest, Carson, Penny, they're not doing the job. They got another offense tackle, and then they got a linebacker to hopefully replace, what Bobby Wagner did. Then they drafted two cornerbacks, which they to shore up the cornerback depth there. So again, I just like their draft. Now they took two wide receivers in the later rounds, which I thought that they didn't need. They could have gone offensive line there or defensive line. That's what they really needed. But that's why I don't get the perfect A plus. But again, at least Seattle finally had a good draft and they have a clear direction what they want to do. New Orleans, I'm giving them an A minus. I thought New Orleans was crazy for trading to 16-11 to get a wide receiver. But once we saw how fast the receivers were going, that ended up being a smart move there because New Orleans needed a Chris Olave or James Williams, and they got that. Also, Trevor Penning at 19 fell in their lap, which is needed because they needed offensive tackle to replace Teron Armstead, who left for Miami. They also get more depth for the defense. The only reason why I don't give them a perfect grade is because I thought, well, Kamara potentially being with Kamara potentially being suspended, I thought they needed it for sure. Like at the very most, like you're a for sure number two running back where you're gonna get some contribution, all that. And if you have to make a couple starts here and there, then fine, we can allow that. But they didn't draft a running back at all, so I thought that was a little bit odd. That's something they should have done. Philly, I'm giving them an A. As a Cowboys fan, it pains me to say this, but the Eagles had a great day. I mean, they traded up the third team, which I thought was for wide receivers. So when Detroit traded up in front of them, I got James Williams. I was laughing, and then they have again Jordan Davis. I'm like, well, great, that's a good get. And then they traded for AJ Brown, so it was like, double fudge. And then, the Kobe Dean in the third round falls in their laps. I'm like, come on, really? So it's like they get just great picks there. Now, I don't like necessarily their later round picks, which is why they don't get the perfect grade. But it's like again, the excellent draft for Philly there, and you can't complain. Baltimore, another team that you can't complain about that much. I guess I should say they get an A as well. They get the best safety in the draft at 14, and the best center in the draft who can play multiple positions along the line falls them at 25. Then they get David Jober from Michigan, who was a first round talent if he didn't towards Achilles during his pro day. So it was just a great draft for them overall. Even I like their later round picks as well. My only concern though is that they traded Marquise Hollywood Brown and then didn't draft a wide receiver to replace him. Now, of course, if they get Jarvis Landry or Julio Jones or something from the scraps, that's understandable. But if they don't, then that was pretty strange that they didn't draft a wide receiver here when they desperately need one. Washington, I'm giving them a D minus. I'm not going to give them an F, but the Commanders didn't really impress me here. I didn't think they needed a wide receiver, but since they did one, I thought they should have drafted Traylon Burks from Arkansas over John Dodson from Penn State. I thought Burks was better. I thought, they drafted Sam Howell, who's, I feel like he's one of those things where like he might be a good backup quarterback or maybe even bridge quarterback at best. I don't feel like he's a future of the franchise, which he desperately needs. Because let's face it, Carson Wentz not the answer there. I don't like much of their later round picks as well. So again, that's why they get D minus. LA Chargers, I'm giving them an A minus. They needed an offense tackle in the first round, which they got. That was Allen Johnson from Boston College. They got running back from A&M who's going to be help Eckler, because they needed to go back a running back. They did get a defensive tackle in the mid round, which they desperately needed from UCLA. Again, I'm not sure about their later round picks, but otherwise they had a pretty good draft here. Tennessee, well, if you have to trade A.J. Brown, which I would recommend, if you have to, the fact that they were able to get Traylon Burks, that's a pretty good replacement there. They drafted a cornerback in the second round, which they needed. They get Malik Willis to back up Tannehill for a year or two before he can eventually take over. Again, I don't like their later round picks, but as far as their beginning picks, I do like it, which is why they get a solid B in my opinion. Pittsburgh, I'm giving them a C. While I do think, Kenny Pickett was one of the only quarterbacks that could start day one, I do think he has a low ceiling. Steelers also need an offensive line. And I know they got some a little offensive line pieces to free agency, but I feel like they should have drafted more to get more younger there at that position, get more depth. And since they didn't draft offensive lineman at all, that's why they got docked a huge amount. So that's why they get a C. Kansas City, once again, the Chiefs just are flexing their muscles. As a good franchise, showing they can draft well. They traded up with the Patriots and were able to get the best corner in the draft that was available to them at that time. Then they steal George Kalafis, the defensive end, who's one of the underrated players in this draft that was slept on. They get wide receiver Sky Moore, one of the fastest receivers in this draft. He's kind of like a Tyreek Hill type of player. I thought he was going to be their first round pick, but the fact that they were able to get him later in the second round was a steal. And then they get a bunch of defensive, pieces later on in the draft to kind of help their depth there. So again, I feel like maybe in the sixth or seventh round they start going in and off the rails, but like overall, it's once again an excellent draft for Kansas City. You can't complain. They get an A. Green Bay, they get a B. I don't. I'm not gonna fault the Packers for not taking a receiver in the first round, based off where they were at, because all the good ones were kind of taken by then, so the rest are second round talent. I do feel like with 2 first round picks, they could have traded up in the first round to get like a Chris Olave or James Williams, but other than that, I feel like they did the best they could in the situation there. And I don't like the later round picks, but again, since they did the best, again, under the circumstances that they had, that's what they get to be. Buffalo, they get an A. They get the best cornerback available at that time. They get one of the best running backs in the draft, James Cook from Georgia. They get the best punter in the draft from San Diego State. Now, again, the reason why they don't get an A+ because not a lot of these players are going to contribute day one. Maybe their first round pick and the punter, maybe, but I feel like they sure up their depth, which is what they needed to do, and they shored up at the right positions, whether it was linebacker, or cornerback, or running back. Dallas. I'm gonna go over my 2 teams that I thought were just shockers that they had that bad of a draft. One is the Cowboys. I'm giving them a C-. That's being generous. Since I'm a Cowboys fan, um, it pains me to say this. And Jerry Jones, that's the thing. He usually has a good draft, but for some reason this year he stunk. He can say Tyler Smith is the top guy all along, but just like Tyler Smith was the most penalized of all the tackles in this draft in college. It's like with the Cowboys being the most penalized team of the year last year, why would you want to risk that and draft that? It's like that's dumb. When you had Tyler Linderbaum, again, the center from mile, right there in your laps, and you didn't take him. And then you take a pass rusher, Sam Smith from Ole Miss in the second round, who has off the field concerns, and he's only a pass rushing specialist. It's like he's going to contribute for 4 downs. It's like, okay, I know you needed to replace Randy Gregory, but you could have gone a little better out there. And then you take a wide receiver from South Alabama, and since you wait until the third round to take a receiver, it's like, oh great. Now you have to just cross your fingers he's good. Now I do like the railing round picks, which is why I'm giving them barely passing grade, but it's like wasn't impressed there. And then obviously the Patriots had the one F in this class, the worst draft grade. You cannot take an offensive guard that was a third round prospect in the first round. I'm sorry. Even if you like him, you cannot do that. You got to draft the best player available, and then in the second round, maybe then you can start thinking about drafting that good player. And then they just drafted 2 running backs, which you don't need. They didn't need to. They already had 2 good running backs, and Stevenson and James. I don't know what the deal was there. And then they drafted the backup quarterback in the 4th round. I had like a 7th round pick where you're like, okay, that could be used for. It's a 4th round pick. It's like really. So I just thought that was a weird draft overall. And then then they didn't really address like their defense concerns either. Besides 2 corners, like they needed some more linebacking depth and all that, but they didn't address that. So that's why they get. I just didn't understand their draft. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for my podcast. Please subscribe to my channel to learn about me. I am going to post every single team tracker on my LinkedIn page so you can see the final grades for all those. But thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. You all have a wonderful day.